Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Once again, we have the man that needs no introduction, Dr. Hardt, who's the founder, president, and chairman of the Biocybernaut Institute. Dr. Hardt, thank you so much for being here.
Doug, it's always a delight to hang out with you and talk about cool stuff.
Yeah, I look forward to this each time. So, Dr. Hardt, one of the questions that has come up, and I was hoping you could explain this a little bit more to us, is why are there different levels of alpha? There's an alpha 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. Tell us a little bit about that, please.
Well, if you were studying math, you couldn't do calculus or analytical geometry or differential equations until you had mastered arithmetic. And within arithmetic, you need to do addition and subtraction and multiplication and division and maybe a square root or two. And then once you have that, then you can go on to algebra and then geometry and then analytical geometry and differential equations, calculus, and then advanced calculus. And so each one of these advanced courses builds upon skills that you learned in the earlier courses. And so it is with Biocybernaut. We think of the Alpha 1 training as BRAINWAVE 101.
Excellent, excellent. So once you go through BRAINWAVE Training 101, I can think of this for me as math or learning a foreign language, right? You start off kind of learning, getting a base fundamental, grasp of the concepts. So what happens between when I do Alpha 1 to when I did Alpha 2?
Well, let's talk about the whole sequence, first sequence, because there are 24 levels of alpha, and they're divided up into groups of 6. So alpha 1, alpha 2, alpha 3, alpha 4, and alpha 5, and alpha 6. So then alpha 1, you start out with 4 channels, the left and right occipital at the back of the head and the left and right central at the top of the head. And these are the sites at which most people have their biggest alpha. So there's most to work with. For almost everyone, the temporals are the lowest. I actually sometimes refer to them as the poor stepchildren of the alpha world. And so you definitely don't want to start out where you're challenged. A rising tide lifts all boats, and if you can get one of your biggest channels to go up, it pulls the others up with it. And so in the alpha 1, and then we're talking, there's 2 different programs there, where there's the single and there's the double. In the single, you go into the chamber once each day, and in the double, you go into the chamber twice each day with a little lunch in between. Of course, those days are longer and the results are more powerful, according to published papers that I've done. For example, on the emotional intelligence increases. They're demonstrably bigger in the alpha 1 double than they are in the alpha 1 single. There are benefits in both. And most of the published research on the increases in creativity and IQ and emotional intelligence and reductions in psychopathology, increases in vigor and friendliness, those were all principally done with the alpha 1. And so we know it to be powerful. The alpha 1 single. The alpha 1 double has only been around for maybe 4 or 5 years. And so we're, of course, accumulating data and publishing from that. But in the alpha 1 single, you have feedback from 4 sites on the head. We're measuring 16 different parameters of brainwaves at each one of those sites. And any one of them is available to be given as feedback. And you do see them all at the end of the day when you look through your polygraph records with the aid of your trainer. Point out, oh, wow, you've got some theta there. Oh, maybe you have some delta. Oh, look, maybe there's some Schumann happening. And so, or, oh dear, muscle tension. You got to stop clenching your jaw or tensing the back of your neck. And so all of this is available, but in addition to the integrated amplitude, which is basically the energy or the power at each one of those 4 sites, in the alpha 1 single, you also get feedback on the hemicoherence between the occipital pair, left and right, and the central pair, left and right. Now, the hemicoherence is essentially a measure of the degree of integration between your left brain and your right brain at each one of those sites. And whereas the power channels, O1, O2, C3, C4, are heard as flutes or oboes, boom, 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 the hemicoherence notes are heard as deep, rich organ music. And so when the organ comes on, either for the occipital pair or the central pair or both, you know that in that moment, your left and your right brain are making alpha simultaneously at one or more of those sites. And so the organ notes, you get all 6 scores from the beginning, day 1. But in the alpha 1 single, the audio, the organ notes only come in day 4. Now, in the premium double, they come in on the 4th session, which is going to be the 2nd session on the 2nd day. And so everything is accelerated, it's faster. And so also in the alpha 1 premium double, we start sneaking in additional channels. So on day 4, in addition to bringing in you have the hemicoherence tones, the organ notes come in 4th session, which is 2nd session of day 2. But on day 4, we add 3 more scores, which are the frontal left and right and the frontal hemicoherence. And then the organ note for the hemicoherence comes in on day 5. And then again, in the premium double, where you go in twice each day, on day 6, we add in the temporals, left and right, and the hemicoherence. And on day 7, we bring in the feedback tone for the temporal hemicoherence. So on day 7 of the alpha 1 premium double, you have all of the channels, 12 channels and 12 tones that you have when you are doing alpha 2. So in alpha 2, you start with all 12 tones and all 12 scores. Now, we know that all learning is divided into 2 parts. The first part is learning how to learn, and the second part is the actual learning. Well, much of the first 3 days in the alpha 1 single, the premium single, is devoted to learning how to learn. So once you become adept at handling all of this information, then you have basically 4 days to work with it. And so when you come in for the alpha 2, you already know this. And so you can start right from the beginning with all 12 channels, knowing what to do. You have some understanding of the forgiveness process. And if you've forgotten something, you're easily and quickly reminded. And so all 7 days of the alpha 2 have the full panoply of tones and scores. And so you get to do the work very, very deeply. So the difference between alpha 1 and alpha 2 is somewhat different if you're doing the single versus the double. In the single, you end up with just 6 tones and 6 scores on day 7 of the alpha 1 single. On day 7 of the alpha 1 double, you end up with 12 tones and 12 scores. So when you come back for alpha 2, you jump right in with 12 tones and 12 scores. And you have then the whole week to actually do the work. Whereas in the alpha 1, you're spending a fair amount of time learning how to learn. You do get enormous work done, as the published results shown, but in the alpha 2, you have pretty much an unimpeded shot at doing the work without having to spend a lot of time learning to do new procedures. Now, when we come to the alpha 3, we turn down the volume of the left side brain, O1, O2, O1, C3, T3, and F3, and on the right side, O2, which is occipital, C4, which is central, T4, which is temporal, and F4, which is frontal. So those are turned down to about 1/3 of the normal volume. And so this emphasizes the volume of the now 4 hemicoherence tones for the occipital pair, the central pair, the temporal pair, and the frontal pair. When Reverend Dr. Michael Beckwith did his alpha 3 training in my Canadian facility, he said, "Oh my God, I feel so integrated. The theme for alpha 3 should be integration." And so it is, because what you're doing in a pairwise way is you're integrating your left and your right brain. The benefits of this are enormous. And there you can just refer to colloquial language where people say, oh, I got to get my head together. Well, yeah, you do. And the easiest and most effective and most profound way to get your head together is to do the Biocybernaut alpha trainings. You have some experience of this in the alpha 1. You have more experience of this in the alpha 2. And in the alpha 3, the entire theme is integration. And so you pretty much, although the power channels left and right are there at 1/3 the normal volume, and of course the scores are there, the emphasis of the audio feedback is on integrating left and right. And if you integrate the occipitals and nothing else, you hear that organ note. If you integrate the centrals left and right, you hear that organ note and nothing else. If you integrate the frontals, you hear the mystic choir and nothing else. If you integrate the temporals, left and right, you hear the mystic choir for that. And so you only have to integrate one pair at a time in order to hear anything. If you integrate 2 pairs, then you hear 2 notes. If you integrate 3 pairs, you hear 3 notes. If you integrate 4 pairs, you hear 4 notes. But now when we come to alpha 4, it's kind of like alpha 1 again, where you have O1, O2, C3, C4, left and right occipital and left and right central. But you don't hear anything at all unless you make alpha at all 4 of those sites. So you see what we're trying to do over time, it'd be too challenging to do it all at once, is to get you to make alpha all over your head all the time, simultaneously. And this is what we see in the yogic superconscious state of samadhi and in the Zen superconscious state of satori, huge alpha all over the head. And so to work you up for that, in alpha 4, we give you the feedback only when you make alpha simultaneously at these 4 sites, O1, O2, C3, C4, which are now reasonably well experienced because you've done those sites in alpha 1, you've done those sites plus more in alpha 2. But when you come to alpha 4, they all have to go into alpha in order to hear anything. Now, in addition to your regular integrated amplitude scores, we also give you what we call the ultra integral scores, which are that aspect of the integrated amplitude score at each channel that occurs during those moments where all 4 channels are lit up in alpha simultaneously. So you were coming close to a couple dozen scores on the screen at this point. Plus, you have the ultra integral of the sum of the left side, ultra integral of the sum of the alpha on the right side, and the total of the ultra integrals on all sides of the head, plus a new number that you've never seen before, which we call the global coherence. And the global coherence score tells you what percent of the time during each 2-minute epoch, all 4 of those channels were lit up in alpha simultaneously. And we adjust the threshold so you start out somewhere between 300 and 700. And of course, ideally, you go up from there. Now, when we come to alpha 5, what we do is we encourage you to make alpha at more sites on the head. Now, we have to have 6 sites. So typically, left and right occipital, left and right central, and left and right frontals. All 6 of those channels have to be in alpha simultaneously in order for you to hear any of the tones. And of course, it's a logical extension then for alpha 6, where we add in the temporals. So the whole head, left and right, has to be lit up in alpha in order to hear any tones. Now, give you a little bit of a sense of what this feels like. Well, I had in training a man who was a professional musician. And he was Italian American, very macho. He was so macho that he thought love was unmanly. And so he had a girlfriend. And so I asked him, well, don't you ever tell your girlfriend that you love her? And he goes, well, when I have an orgasm inside of her, I have to say something. But love, it was not something that he really recognized or felt. He just said it because he was expected to say it. Okay, so it happened that he was a dime a dozen club member. He prepaid for 12 trainings, got a 20% discount, and he did alpha 5 and alpha 6 back to back with only the 3 days off in between. And he said that the experience of love, profound, unconditional love, was so intense when he had all the channels making alpha at once that when he would fall out of it, like if one or more of the channels fell out of alpha, then the tones would stop. He said the feeling of love was so beautiful and so profound that when he fell out of it, it was actually painful. So, and this is somebody who began his Alpha 1 thinking that love was unmanly. And now the profound qualities of love were known to him in such a way that when his whole head lit up in Alpha, that there was this amazing, profound feeling of love. I remember my first Celtic teacher talking about understanding. They would personify divinity as a goddess. And he would say, once you have known her, all else is blight. And so this guy found that the Alpha experience was so enormously filled with the deepest love that when he fell out of it temporarily, it was actually painful. So there you have some understanding of the progression. Our goal, even in the Alpha 1 single, is to get you to make Alpha over as much of the head as possible. Now, if you give people too much information in the beginning, they go into overwhelm. I actually made this mistake when I first introduced the hemicoherence. I had been doing the integrated amplitude feedback, but then at one point, I think it was 1985, I introduced the hemicoherence function. And I was so excited that I introduced it on the first day along with the integrated amplitude. And the trainees actually went into overwhelm and they were confused and they didn't make progress. So I realized I learned a very valuable lesson there. And then that's when I would give people all 6 scores from day 1, but I would not introduce the hemicoherence tones until day 4. Now in the premium double, where people have 2 sessions a day in the chamber, we introduce it on the 4th session, which is the second session of the second day. And so sometimes people say, well, why don't you give us all the feedback at once? And I go, well, I tried it and it was a disaster. People just ended up dazed and confused and had essentially no learning. And so you have to stage things for people, introduce things a new thing once they've begun to master the previous thing that you introduced. So there we have it, Alpha 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6.
All with a plan. Absolutely love it. Well, as always, Dr. Hardt, thank you so much for your time and thank you for all the wonderful work that you do.
You're ever so welcome, Doug. Looking forward to connecting again soon.
Absolutely.
Hi, I'm Tony Robbins. Listen, if you are looking to improve your brain, your psyche, your ability, your emotions, your ability to really maximize your performance, and you want to really dig into your brain, my dear friend, Dr. Jim Hardt, and his Biocybernaut program is extraordinary. I've been through it myself. My wife, Sage, has. Members of my family have. And we found it to be truly extraordinary. But it is not for the faint at heart. Unless you're dead serious about really taking things to the next level, don't bother. We went through the Alpha program designed to maximize your ability to create alpha waves. And it was challenging and it was incredibly rewarding. And I'd recommend it to anybody serious about improving the quality of their lives or including the quality of their family lives as well. So check out Cybernaut, check out Dr. Jim Hardt, and if you do, I think you'll be really, really pleased. And the entire time you are learning to think and how you think these electrodes create sounds, and you learn how to put yourself in the zone of alpha. But it's a bitch. It's horrible. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody that wants easy experiences, but I'd recommend it to anybody that wants to grow immensely. And by the first day, I'm like, who do I got to shoot to get out of this thing? Oh, it's me. I'm the one that did this shit, right? But by the end of the week, all 3 of us were able to go in this state of alpha. And if you're familiar with alpha, the best way I can describe alpha is there's no problem that can't be solved in alpha. Because every problem that we have was created by us.
Thank you for being here and absorbing this information about the science of brainwaves and about the stories of people whose lives have been beneficially altered, improved, by doing brainwave training at Biocybernaut. And now I'm reaching out to you to invite you to come and be a part of the Biocybernaut adventure. Biocybernauts are to inner space what astronauts are to outer space. So come and adventure with us. And if you'd like to leave a comment on the videos, you can do that, or there's a link you can click if you'd like to learn more. We welcome you to Biocybernaut.